Welcome.
Welcome to the Everything podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be recapping Antidec's Limitless Win Season 4, Episode 1, which was released on the 4th of January 2025. Still getting used to saying 2025. I haven't slipped up yet, like I thought I would, because I think last year when I was starting with 2024, I was like, but I have been getting it right so far, so yay me. But, yes, you may have noticed there was no trailer for Limitless Win at the end of yesterday's event because there's not been one released. So that's why there's no trailer. So without further ado, here is my recap of Antidec's Limitless Win Season 4, Episode 1. We start off with the previously recap and highlights of Season 4 show. Antidec introduced themselves in the episode. Antidec explained how Limitless Win works. Joe and Joe were introduced. That's confusing. Joe and Joe reveal their preparations for Limitless Win. Joe reveals that they took a tape measure to the supermarket. Joe reveals the competitive nature that comes out when watching Limitless Win. Antidec take a selfie with Joe and Joe. Dec wishes Joe and Joe good luck. Joe and Joe get 25 lives. Antidec introduce the lifelines. Antidec insult their own general knowledge. Joe and Joe lock in their first answer. This answer is an exact answer. Dec reveals that Joe and Joe have banked £1,000. Joe and Joe now have 30 lives. Joe reveals their dream amount. Joe and Joe lock in their next answer. This answer is under. Joe and Joe have to use 8 of their lives. Joe and Joe receive their odd or even lifeline. Joe and Joe lock in their following answer. Joe and Joe use their odd or even lifeline. This answer is exact. Joe and Joe banked £10,000. Joe and Joe now have 27 lives. Ant compliments Joe and Joe's gameplay. Dec reminds us of the cash out button. Joe and Joe lock in another answer. This answer is exact. Joe and Joe bank £20,000. Joe and Joe now have 32 lives. Joe mentions her positivity crystal. Joe and Joe lock in their next answer. This answer is under. Joe and Joe use 8 of their lives. Joe and Joe receive their Take 2 lifeline. Joe and Joe use their Take 2 lifeline. Joe and Joe lock in their answer. Antidec lock in their answer. The board accepts Antidec's answer. This answer is under. Joe and Joe bank £100,000. Joe and Joe now have 25 lives. Joe and Joe lock in another answer. Their answer is under. Joe and Joe use 21 of their lives. Joe and Joe receive their more than lifeline. Joe and Joe use their more than lifeline. Joe and Joe cash out for £100,000. The question Joe and Joe cashed out on would have been the exact answer if they had played it. Joe and Joe celebrate. Jordan and Steve are introduced. Jordan and Steve get 25 lives. Antidec show Jordan and Steve where their lifelines are located. Jordan mentions his and Steve's age gap. Jordan and Steve lock in their first answer. This answer is exact. Jordan and Steve bank £1,000. Jordan and Steve now have 30 lives. Jordan and Steve lock in their next answer. This answer is under. Jordan and Steve use 2 of their lives. Jordan and Steve receive their Take 2 lifeline. Jordan and Steve use their Take 2 lifeline. Jordan and Steve lock in their answer. Antidec lock in their answer. The game rejects Antidec's answer and is Jordan and Steve's answer. This answer is under. Jordan and Steve use 7 of their lives. Jordan and Steve receive their odd or even lifeline. And the episode finishes off with a preview of the next episode of Antidec's Limitless Win, obviously. And there's my recap of Antidec's Limitless Win Season 4, Episode 1, with recaps of all the other episodes from Season 4 to follow in future episodes. So you might be asking, what am I covering in tomorrow's episode? Unfortunately, there's no trailer for this, and that is because it is the Big Finish podcast episode released on the 5th of January 2025. That's what I'm covering. So it'll be the first Big Finish related release, not that you will have seen in 2025, but that was released in 2025. Back to this episode, let me know what you thought of Antidex Limitless Win Season 4 Episode 1 if you watched it. My review, if you think could be thoughts on both of those in the comments below. As well as anything else you want me to cover the channel, such as any previews or recaps, put those in the comments below as well. And remember, you can also like, comment and subscribe. And that's it for this episode of the Everything Podcast. And I will see you in tomorrow's episode for my recap of the Big Finish podcast episode released on the 5th of January 2025. Goodbye.